In our previous lesson, we looked at how to create a data model from tables. We also had a look on how to use the Power Pivot window here, where we come to a table and then we just add it to our data model. So in this video, we're going to look at using the Power Query editor, with tables in the same workbook we're working out of, like this, loading those tables into the data model, and then creating relationships, and at the end of the day, creating pivot tables and charts. We're also going to work with external files, but let's start with the Excel tables. From the Excel tables here, if you come to data, to start working with the Power Query editor, let's create a query for this table now. So queries from tables, you come here, you click on the Get Transform section of this data tab, you click from table, and then when you do that, it opens the Power Query editor. And if you open this up, you see we have that sales table that we highlighted that we were on. It has created a query for us from that table. This is a preview of what your data looks like. And this here is the query settings where you can change the name, alter some, look at the properties. And then here we have the applied steps. These applied steps, everything that you do on this Power Query editor is recorded. So if you have a case where, let's say, this sales information are being updated, for example, this one we have here is for a certain time of the year. I think we mostly have 2011. So let's assume we just have 2011 here on this date field. Now, if at some point we get into 2012 and then new information is added, new sales information is added for 2012. If it is the same table that we picked this data from and it is updated there, any transformation we do on that table, we apply also to the new data that we have. So on this home tab, we have a couple of features here. You could decide the columns that you want here. For example, if I don't want all these columns, if I just want the costs and let me say I just need the product amount and cost, I could come to choose columns, click on choose columns, and watch everything we do. You see that it is being recorded here. I can decide the columns that I want. Let's say I want customer cost alone, and then I click on OK. Now what this has done is that it has removed every other column that I don't need and just kept the ones that I need. And the good thing about the apply steps is that after you apply a step in the Power Query editor, if you could mistakenly apply a wrong step. So when you apply a wrong step, you can always go back and change it by just clicking the X in this applied steps section. And when you do that, it will take you back to your last step before you applied that step. If you look here, the manage columns, you can choose columns, remove columns. You can remove a certain column that you select. Like for example, I select this, I can remove this, or I can remove other columns. If you remove other columns, you just keep this and remove every other thing else. You can decide to keep rows, keep bottom rows and all that. So, but one thing I want to draw your attention to here is this query, you can also get a fresh query from another file, whether it's within your an Excel file, CSV file, text document, a folder, connect to databases, other sources, Azure sources, and your web and some other online sources, Facebook, Salesforce, and the rest of them. But one thing I want you, for this case, remember we are working with Excel files, Excel tables, and on our Excel tables, we have three tables there. On our Excel work, we'll have three tables there. We have the sales table, the customers table, and the products table. So if you look here in this home tab, this query section, you have something here called the advanced editor. And when you click on that, you see what we have here. This is the code behind this transfer, this connection we have done for this query, connecting to the source and changing the type. We see that it did some transformation for us automatically. Power Query editor did it based on what it feels those types should be. It changed the type of some of the columns. Let's delete that step so that we don't. Let's just get rid of that step so that everything is just the way it is. So we have just the only apply step here is the source. So now I want to connect to the other tables that I have in my Excel workbook. But now Power Query editor doesn't have a connector here to connect to a table in that workbook. It will only import data from an Excel file. Now, if I could decide to come to this Excel file here and then go and select my Excel file that I am currently working it, and then decide to pull in the tables from in there. So I could decide to come and connect to this Excel file. Let's see if that will work. And then it's trying to connect to that Excel file, which is the same Excel file we created this from. And then you can choose to connect to the tables. But that's a different scenario. That means you are trying to connect to an external file. And that's not what we're doing now. Now we are still on the Excel workbook and we have tables in that Excel workbook. And let's say we don't want to connect to an external file. You can just come to the advanced editor here. When you click on the advanced editor, you see this code here. This is the code that connects to this workbook. So you see that we have the let source equals Excel, the current workbook. The name of that workbook is sales. We have named our workbook, and then the content in that. So that is what brings about this connection and this preview we have here. So all I'm going to do is create blank queries. Now this is a query. I can create a blank query and then just alter this information to connect to a different workbook. Instead of sales, we have customers and products. It will connect to customers and products. So you can just Control C this here, and then you can come here. You have two options. You can either come and create a blank query here, or you can just come and duplicate this. So I'm going to just duplicate this for ease. Remember, we have 3 tables, so I'll just duplicate them. Then this second table, I click on that query, come to the advanced editor, and then I'm going to change this here. Instead of having sales, the other table we have is customers. So I'm going to change it. So you just watch what's going to happen to the columns that we have here. You see that it's going to change a little bit. So let me just OK this and see what happens. And you can see that it has fetched the information from the customers table, because now in the source code for that query, we changed the name of the table we want in the current workbook to customers. So we can all just change this to the correct name here. Come here and change the name to customers, and we have our customers table there. Then let's come to this other third one that we duplicated and do the same thing. You go on the home tab, you go to advanced editor, and then we change this to products. We have products table there, remember? So products table, and we OK this and see our table has changed to information for our products. You change the name here to products and you are going to be OK. So there are a few things here about data types that we could talk about, but I'm not going to go into that right now because we're going to, like I said, we're going to trash that in Power BI when we're talking about the Power Query editor in detail. But I just needed you to know that you can connect to from your the data tab on the ribbon from your Excel workbook. You can connect to a query. You can create a query from a table, and then you can also use the advanced editor to connect to other workbooks, other tables in that workbook. So when I'm done here and I want to be able to use this to create my pivot table, you have two options here. You can use close and load, and this will just immediately load this to an Excel table. But now that's not what I want. I want it to close and load to. So I'm going to select what I want. I don't want it to create more tables for me. I only want a connection to be created. So once a connection is created, that means I can use it to do my pivot tables. So now I'm going to add this to the data model. And so my data model is going to contain these 3 tables now. So click on load, and then we'll see this add to our data model. So if you look here, you see the 3 queries, sales, customers, and products, are being added to the data model with the number of rows. Now remember, it's always good for you to load it to the data model instead of loading it as a table, because loading it as a table has limitations. If that table is more than, in this case, we're getting it from a table. So the table, whatever number of rows the table had, that's what will reflect in our data model. But when we're working with external files, it's best for you to load it to the data model instead of loading it as a table. so that you will not have it truncate your number of records, because after 1 million records, the Excel file will not add any other thing. So now we have our 3 queries here. So let's just go to a new sheet to see that this works. Let's create a pivot table. And then from the pivot table, remember I told you once there's a data model in your Excel workbook, it's going to be the default option for you to create your pivot table. So that's why you see it says use this workbook's data model, because we have created a data model from those 3 tables. So we click on OK, and then we are on a new sheet and our pivot table has been created. So if I come here, you can see here that I have all of this. I have all of this here. Let me just go ahead and hide these tables because I don't want to see them now. I hide this. So now I have my 3 tables in here. Customers table. Of course, this is my query. This is a table. This is the query. This is a table. The query, you'll be able to see it based on this. Is a table with this yellow thing next to it, so you know that that's a query. So let us just quickly establish the relationship between these tables. So let me come to from the customer key, I'm going to come to a country. Let me just put a country here. And then I am going to go to my products or my sales table. Let me put the amount here. And let me change this and to have the sum. Okay. Now you see what we're having here. We're trying to use the amount on this, but then while we're creating this table, these queries, we did not define the data type. So we can go back to our Power Query editor. If you come here, you can go back to Power Query editor here. Your queries are already showing here anyways. So once you highlight one of them, once you're on them, it shows you this pop-up. So you can just click here to edit that query. It takes you back into the Power Query editor. So now what we want to do now is to make sure that the data types are correct. Now here, remember when I started, the Power Query editor had changed the data type of some of these columns, but I deleted that because I only wanted us to have the apply step here to be source. So now let us make sure that we change the data type for every single column. So for this particular one, let's just go ahead. The ones that most important anyway for this is the amount. So for the amount, let's go ahead. The amount and cost, let's change them to numbers because we want them to be able to do aggregation. So for our customer info, everything seems okay. I can just change this to dates time here so that we have something good. Can come and change the date also to dates time. Those are the most important for this example. And then our product information, everything, you can leave it the way it is. So this and this are okay. Decimal numbers. This we change to date time, and then the customer's query, you came to the birth date and change it to dates time. And you can notice as we added, once we changed it, the apply step was put in here. Let's change this here, where apply step was put in here. So you can just click close and load. Remember, it's already part of our data model, so we don't need to do the close and load 2 again. So just close and load, and then it will affect every change that you have done on this point. So watch out for this count of amount and see there should be a change there when we are done. So instead of having one figure all round, you're going to have a couple of different figures for the respective countries. Okay, that has been affected, but we still have the same single figures here, and that's because there is no relationship that has been detected between them. So now these 3 tables are just 3 queries are standing alone. There's no relationship between them. So here I'm going to just do an auto detect, and the auto detect will check and see if you correctly shape your data, you should be able to see relationships created automatically. And if you look at our table here, we see that we now have separate figures here, not just the total figure that was running all through. And we don't want to see a count of amount, so let's come to our value field settings and change that to sum. And the number format, let us change that to currency because we want to see it in dollars, and okay that, and we are good here. We need to also do the same thing with our products table. So let me change this here, because in the products table we need a relationship also, and we don't have that here. So if we come here, you see that it's still showing us the same figures here, and we need to have that relationship. So it auto detects the relationship based on the tables that we have used to build this chart, this pivot table, and we have our thing working out here. So let me move this to come to the active tab. So okay, and the active tab here. So now we see that we have relationships working between each of these tables, and we created one table with two different tables using data from two different tables, and now we have created another one. Let me just separate this so that it's clear enough. This is for, I'll get rid of this from the products table, and let's go to customers table and put here country. Yeah, so this is one table from two different tables, this is from two different tables, and there are relationships between them. In the other videos, remember we have created pivot tables, created pivot charts. So from here, you'll be able to know how to, you should know how to go about creating your pivot table, because the process remains the same. It's just the way you connected to the tables, creating the queries that differ. So in our next video, we're going to try and connect to external files, CSV files, and as many connectors as we can do in a short time. I'll see you in the next video.